we talk about make programs and make in India, that's an age-old starting point in the DPP 2006, where make programs were first time introduced. Revolution in military affairs at that point of time had started to talk about precision and communication layer, expanding the horizon from 20 mile horizon to a global horizon for war. More or less, India and China were starting on their network-centric journey together, and India was supposedly the IT hub and the IT superpower, and therefore it was kind of thought in the world that India would be the first one to transform. It was also the time where very clearly we had a situation where we had 1998 and the sanctions on India, and then steadily we had started to build the partnership with the US, and sanctions were slightly getting eroded. In fact, we had a situation where we went in and created the defense acquisition process the first time, and which was primarily meant on the American procurement process. We had the IDS come in, and consolidation of requirements started to come in. We had the RFP process which came in, and the make process was the indigenous version of DARPA. That was the starting point where we were supposed to do things where we would be part funded by the Indian industry, but primarily, apart from DRDO, a new wave of capability and products. And the products were supposedly not just one item, but a series of systems which will come in and create transformation. So the first three projects which came in were TCS, BMS, and FICV. Unfortunately, all of that has gone through and nothing of that has come in. We have also seen a huge change in the security environment in this country. We have seen after April 2019 a situation where China is sitting at our doorstep, where we used to talk about desert and plains for the army as our first line of issues and problems, and a limited war of 10 days or 20 days. We seem to have getting into a situation where that is no longer a reality. We are now seeing very clearly in 2005, 2006, if somebody said that in 10 years' time we would have signed the 4 foundational agreement with the Americans, I would have been very, very surprised, but we have. All of these are completely changing the issues. The other very major change which has happened is network centricity has moved into AI and narrow AI, at least where the decision making is moving into autonomous mode. Chinese were the first to do it because they had the least amount of issues with that, but that is pushing the envelope of war. The second thing which the Chinese have done beautifully is they have created a Berlin Wall for their internet, and the world is exposed. So they have cyber as their primary weapon of attack, and it attacks not the borders, but each one of us, each critical infrastructure, each banking, everything. So we have a very different kind of a scenario today. And in this scenario, we have to now look at what is Make in India, how this Make in India needs to move things forward. And even in today's two sessions, the two things which came out to me, one was from Boeing, when they said you have the DOP, which is your defense production policy, which has clear targets of 25,000 crores or 5 billion defense production, 1 billion exports by 2025. It talks about value addition in India and exports. And you have a situation where you still have restrictions in procurement processes and offset processes, where we get into a situation where, 100% FDI may be allowed or 74% FDI may be allowed, but those companies are not fully Indian. I mean, we have to find a way and rationalization of what is Make in India, what do you want to do, if we want to do and play in the global supply chain, because your 11,000 crores number which is coming in from your defense production, a large part of that is global supply chain. So if the global supply chain is where you have to go, you need to reform. You need to be very clear about what things are and how things would move on. So with that in as a perspective, may I now request Mr. Jaju to open with his remarks on Make and Make in India. Thank you, sir.
It's indeed a fact that, the strength of any country's military and the country of our size and diversity and complexities and problems that we have, need to have Atmanirbharta in defense. Gone are the days when militaries could acquire arms and ammunition from world over and leverage that to create a strength for themselves. Now, the strength of any country's military actually comes in from the strength of the industry that's backing the military of that country. And I think it is in this context that we look at creating Atmanirbharta and self-reliance in defense manufacturing sector. And we have come a long way now. We're doing Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav and India at 75. One can proudly say that there's hardly a segment in which the indigenous design, development and manufacturing capabilities do not exist within our country. In fact, we were looking at some statistic and we realized that on an average, 70% of our total acquisition is now from the indigenous sources. And it cuts across all the segments, the land segment, the naval segments, the air segments, missiles, electronics. So that way, this development is quite omnibus as well as diversified and holistic. While our journey started with public sector companies, now you have close to 550 companies in the private sector which have taken the license to do defense manufacturing within the country. All this gives us very happy signals that this is the time to start looking at defense as not just a paradigm for meeting our strategic requirements, but also start looking at this sector as an economic multiplier. And not just Make in India for India, but Make in India for the world. It's in this context that significant reforms have been brought in. If I start talking about the reforms, starting with the reforms in the defense procurement procedure, which it used to be called earlier, now we call it as defense acquisition procedure, in which we've actually tried to apply the tenets of Atmanirbharta. And all of you would know that if there was a default category for procurement, it is the Buy Indian IDDM category. So first, a product actually, or any acquisition actually has to be tested at the altar of Buy Indian IDDM, and then only you proceed to other categories. And that's how you get this 70% number. Many of you would be knowing that we have also brought in two lists. We call it positive indigenization list, and these are the two lists of 209 items. And the items which are included in those lists actually are giving an assurance to the industry that the country is not going to buy those items from anywhere other than India from the dates stipulated in the orders. So it also gives you an assurance that, look, this is a time for you to get into the design and manufacturing of those items, because when the time comes, the opportunity would be only available to the indigenous developer and producer. In fact, if you look at the budget now, we have also created a separate budget allocation for domestic procurement. So now close to 65% of our total capital budget is allocated for domestic procurement. Again, a very important signal to the industry. As was mentioned by the moderator, you have the MAKE procedure. And MAKE procedure was actually created for allowing industry to do R&D in defense. And through the MAKE 1, fund it. And through the MAKE 2, provide the procurement assurance, although the research cost is met by the industry, but you have the procurement assurance that you are developing a product and it's a co-development, and all such co-developments also help you create a lot of dual technologies and products which could be applied not just in the military, but in the commercial segment as well. Besides this, initiatives like, liberalizing the entire FDI regime. You're aware that we now have automatic route available till 74% for any foreign investor to bring in money in the defense sector. And you can even actually do 100% provided there is justification, and with the government approval, even 100% FDI is permitted in defense. In order to bring startups close to the defense ecosystem, we've also brought in an initiative called as Innovations for Defense Excellence. Also happen to be the CEO of the organization called Defense Innovation Organization. And this initiative has actually helped us create a bridge between the startups and the defense establishments. We have 5 rounds of Defense India Startup Challenge run. And as part of that, now we have close to 60 contracts signed with the startups for developing various products which could be used by the military. And the 5th round of Defense India Startup Challenge was just completed, and we have again got very good response, and we're in the process of sorting out the applications that we have received. And now we have tried to institutionalize this entire process of trying to get the startups close to defense. You're all aware that we're doing very well when it comes to creating an ecosystem for startup. We are arguably the 3rd largest startup ecosystem in the world, and close to 60 unicorns and many more unicorns. And we expect that defense also will throw up some of these enterprises with the kind of initiatives and with the kind of enthusiasm shown by these startups towards producing products and technologies for the defense sector. Export has been one of our important priorities, because we know that defense being a monopoly, it may not be possible for us to provide adequate procurement opportunities with competing resource constraints and competing needs. And that's why export has been one of our important planks. We've actually liberalized the entire system of export authorizations, and the results are there for all of you to see. I mean, about 3 years back, we used to do exports of about 1,500 crore, which is now gone up to about 10,000 crores in a year, almost a 7 times increase. In order to bring synergic development in the defense manufacturing sector, we have also identified two defense industrial corridors, one in the state of Uttar Pradesh and another in the state of Tamil Nadu. And I'm sure a lot of investment is now flowing into these two states. And with this, we will be able to bring in integrated and holistic development. Friends, these are just some initiatives that I thought I will talk about. I understand that you have a lot of other panelists who are coming from businesses, industry, and I'm sure you're all going to make use of the opportunities that are coming in this segment. Of course, these are always coming in with a caveat. Defense is a complicated sector. It's a monopoly. You only have one buyer or buyers of similar, the militaries all over the world. So with those limitations, this is one segment which, though difficult, but also allows you to develop military grade products, and these products also have dual use. So this is one segment in which there are huge possibilities, and with a growing demand for military modernization and the growing demand for civil aerospace, I'm sure this segment has many things to offer. Once again, I'd like to thank Business World for bringing me to this panel. I would have been very happy to be present there in person. But all of you are aware that we have recently converted the Ordnance Factory Board into 7 companies. That's another major reform that's been brought in. And I'm sure these 7 companies will bring in a complete new paradigm to the overall ecosystem that we have for defense. But that also adds a lot of work on my platter. So unfortunately, I was not able to make it to the venue. And I'll also not be able to continue beyond this because I have few things lined up. So once again, my gratitude and thanks to the organizers and to all of you esteemed guests for bearing with this inconvenience. Over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanjay. May I now request my co-member from the Kelkar committee, Mr. Ashok Kanodia, to enlighten with his views and what is so great about make and how we can make it make.
Thank you. Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, Business World, for this opportunity to have a discussion and exchange of views. Things have been, what I see, and I would not hesitate to say so, that since this government has come, many of the things that were around, the concepts that were already in public domain, and they became kind of a procedure, but remained in the books and were not implemented, are getting implemented slowly. And I'll give a small example. Setting up a target of 5 billion in exports looks kind of easy, but when you look at the defense sector, you have to have an exportable product. Defense exportable product means the product is yours. You cannot export something where you need to go and seek permission first before you can export to any third country. So some synergies around the make, indigenization, Atmanirbhar Bharat, or export targets appear to be very synergetic in its concept and in its approach. Now, I have come from an MSME and I have been in electronics and communication. So I believe that, there are issues with us and these are the perfect forums to present those issues. What are the challenges? it's very nice to say that the industry should spend in R&D and that 500 million and all the numbers you can throw all over the place. But if I design something, who will buy? Is the system ready to buy a product that you like and you approve on a single vendor basis? Policy has changed. There are options. But are these options implemented on ground? Fact is no. The powers were shifted to the SHQs up to 300 crores, and that's a lot of money. Are they exercising the powers? No. Can any director float his requirement of a QR, which is actually his requirement in today's day and age? And if he has only one response, will the tender go through? No. Our first premise is we need to have a generic QR. We want maximum participation. What does this amount in real world to us is? मुझे बेसलाइन चाहिए, इसके बिना मेरा काम नहीं चलेगा, उसके बाद तो फिर दाल रोटी मिल जाए, उसके बाद देखा जाएगा. So this is where now the dichotomy comes, and this is where our segment of the industry, which has the ability, and ability in what? Not only technical, risk-taking ability. Go to organizations, some of my colleagues belong there. You will first have to explain to the board as to what is the risk-return analysis on this particular thing. And in the defense sector, not a single director of your board will ever approve the risk profile. Why? Now, gentlemen, think about it. This is not something that promotes real development in the country. Even if I'm prepared to make an investment, where is my revenue? So the predictability of the revenue in the current system and the mindset does not exist. And when I say does not exist, it is very strong. But the fact of the matter is on ground, it doesn't exist. So I'm repeating it. So the first change of mindset that is required is that the CFA, which happens to be the vice chiefs, should very clearly let this go down the line. That, buddy, you go ahead. Even if you have one single response that meets your requirement, I am prepared to sign that RFP and let this go through. The day that happens, you will see a fair amount of change in scenarios. Right now, defense is talked about. I'm speaking from past experience and I've burnt myself very badly because after development, based on the request of the user, and the user will not buy because I was the only one. And I had to wait for 3 years before the RFP came, when they actually created a second person, and the second person bid something which he said, "Mere ko to entry chahiye thi." So this is what I have faced, and this is what is continuing till date. So that's the thing. There is recently a discussion on that, we should have a T1 L1 system, the technologically number one and lowest number one. My friends, how many percentage of RFPs actually go through? On a simple L1 basis, on a baseline QR? If that is the system that we have today, then you are adding complexity exponentially. Find that my system is better than Rahul's. Define करते रहिए और मैं कोर्ट में 2 लाइनें कहूंगा और आपकी RFP खत्म हो जाएगी. So this change in mindset is one of the most important things that needs to take place. Second, MSMEs with all their risk-taking ability still need revenues. Through the medium of business world, BW, defense, I want to communicate that offset was a very big bucket of business for all of us. All of us have learned from our foreign partners, be it Raytheon, be it Airbus, be it the Eltas and the Elbits, you name it. If we could ever do business with them, it was only because they literally held our hands. And they held our hands because they were forced to. There was an incentive, there was a requirement that you have to buy from local. This offset requirements or threshold being raised from 300 to 2000 is not something that helps us. That's the second point. Rahul talked about the 20 plus 20 doctrine being out, and on his behalf and my behalf, I will say one thing: we are no Fauji's. We have not fought a war, but we have been associated for a very long time with the system, and we do read. If we read the lay of the land correctly today, our northern neighbor, it's going to be a sustainability issue, sustenance. When you are looking at sustenance, then now you couple the indigenization, which is the topic of our session, and promote that. How do you promote it? Whatever let me give you an example. हम तो डिफेंस की फ्रेटर्निटी हैं. कितना एमिनेशन बाहर से खरीदते हैं भाई? 70 साल के बाद कितना एमिनेशन यहां बनता है? And we will be ashamed. I remember being a part of that committee, a part of that meeting in the South Block, when the MGO, who is no more today, had first floated the concept of how are we going to bring in private sector in ammunition manufacturing. More than 6 years have passed, Ashok. 6 years have passed. What has happened? Nothing at all. Are we really serious about anything here? And why? It only leads to think one thing in our minds. There is a very serious conflict of interest. And this conflict of interest is keeping this nation back like one cannot imagine. Please promote the key areas which can be done very well in India and move ahead, give place orders, even if it is on a single vendor. Your requirement is 100. Somebody has come up and he is giving you something. Okay, don't give him 100. Give him 40, give him 50, give him an economical lot so that he can recoup his development. Wait for somebody to come. And I'm sure you are giving it at a higher price. We are, हम ट्रेडर्स रहे हैं जनरेशन से, thousands of years. तो हमारे बाप दादा काम करते थे कि एक, you buy a bale of burlap, jute cloth. And I remember my grandfather telling me कि बेटा 100 रुपए में खरीद के हमने 100 रुपए का बर्लप बेच दिया तो कमाई कहाँ हुई? तो हमारी कमाई होती थी जो स्टील के हुप्स लगे रहते थे, स्टील को बेच के. नाउ वी कम फ्रॉम अ ट्रेडिंग मेंटालिटी और हमारे जितना भी बायर्स हैं, डिफेंस ले लीजिए, खरीदना चाहते हैं टॉप ग्रेड, लेकिन बड़ा महंगा है. अरे भाई, यदि हम सस्टेनेंस की बात करते हैं तो वेयर इज आवर प्रॉब्लम? The cost of a hardware or a platform is 1, the life cycle cost is at least 5. So 1:5 का ratio है ना? But if it has been manufactured by me in our own country, the cost of sustenance would be less than a quarter. And this is proven. This is not something that needs to be proved. तो मेरी overall cost तो half से कम हो गई ना? Sustainability के लिए एक और एग्जाम्पल देता हूं. C295. We were talking about that we are going to create an aero sector in the country. How long did it take? How long the company had to wait to place an order? Today, the single largest challenge on sustainability is the cost of bringing the material to our border. Our adversaries can bring in, and I don't have to say in presence of August gathering like this, how many days to bring in a division at our border and the kind of infrastructure they have, which is road and rail. मंत्री जी ने सुबह कहा था कि मैं 7 करोड़ रुपया रोज बचा रहा हूं अटल टनल से. A small example on the cost and sustainability over a period of time. Now, I will touch upon one more topic which I think is very important and where MSME sector has a huge role to play. Cyber. Friends, I don't know how many of you know that more than $500 million of investment in the last 12 months has come in the cyber sector, in the startups, and in the companies that are doing cyber development today. China has created what he called the Chinese wall. It is actually called the Golden Wall. And this is not the forum to talk about it and what can be done, but let me tell you, the world hackers are trying to break it and to penetrate it. And they have created features which after second attempt, your URL will be down. There is no need to fire any weapon at all. Nothing. I can bring you to line with only one small show to tell you, you go out of line and this is what I can do to you. My earnest request through again this platform is, please invest in cyber. Coming from telecom, in the good old days, there used to be a word which called forklift change. You just lift whatever equipment you have and you bring in the new equipment. Time has come that all our sensitive organizations just lift all your routers, servers, switches which are not made in India and replace them with what is available locally. And friends, I know everything is available locally. लेकिन हम लोगों को उतनी अच्छी अंग्रेजी नहीं आती है. हम अपनी बात को उस तरह कह नहीं पाते हैं जो कि ये ग्लोबल कंपनी कहती है. And our mindset that import, if this company is selling is always better. After 400-500 years, we have not been able to shake out that stuff from our mind, which is self-confidence. Please, we don't have too much of time. Again, from our non-uniform perspective, the window is as small as 2 years. Thank you, Rahul.
Thank you. May I now request Pratt & Whitney, Ms. Sethi to join us and give her perspective on Make in India and how you see this entire supply chain piece helping India and you.
So good morning, good afternoon. It's a great honor to be here. Can all of you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, great. I think what Shri Jaju said, at least 50% of those reforms are well-intentioned. I mean, the entire reforms are well-intentioned. And before I start off on, how Pratt & Whitney is looking at Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat, I just want to talk a little bit about our presence and footprint here, which continues to grow exponentially, in the last 2 years, and in the coming next 3 to 4 years, I do expect it to grow even more so. A less known fact, in the commercial sector, every second Indian actually flies on a Pratt & Whitney powered airplane. Pratt & Whitney has about 1,500 engines in India, which is the installed base, and therefore larger than any other engine making company in India. On the military side, we are on the C-17s and the Pilatus trainers. And now you just spoke of the C-295. The engine on the C-295 will actually be a Pratt & Whitney 127G engine. So that's on the military side. But the commercial side, we have about 700 engines installed base. And on the small civil side, we have another 600 engines installed base here. So basically, when Indigo placed a huge order on Airbus and Pratt & Whitney for engines in 2005, it was the largest order. And that brought in a huge inflection point in the commercial sector at that time, I would say. That was the first time the world woke up and started talking about what, what the potential in India was for aviation. Till then, India was not on the aviation world map. And why I make this point here is that in India, India has made progress in leaps and bounds, when it has grown in the aviation sector. And I would wish, we could make similar progress in the defense sector in such leaps and bounds. Pratt & Whitney has a training center. It's a flagship training center in Hyderabad, the only one outside of the US currently. It has a R&D center in Bangalore. We have a capability center which has 200 people working for it, and it's going to grow exponentially. We are looking at engineering. We are looking at other parts of the defense and aerospace manufacturing ecosystem, exploring all of those here in India. Our sister company, Collins Aerospace, exports close to $500 million out of India in manufacturing and across engineering that it does in India. Now coming to how do we take this entire Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat to the next level. We are already seeing that offsets were a great catalyst, as my predecessor, the speaker before me said. It was a huge catalyst to bring in defense manufacturing into India and engineering into India. Currently, how OEMs are looking at India is not just based on offsets. And how we are looking at India, for us, it's not a market anymore. It is hugely a place where we feel that we want to come into India for its own inherent strengths, which aligns with every company's strategy. We have a huge cost benefit here. We have a huge capability benefit here. We have a huge talent benefit which India offers. And those are the areas I think that the government needs to really promote in terms of very conducive policies and creating an environment for the OEMs to come in and bring in the capital and investment. Our suppliers, it was just mentioned again by the previous speaker, that suppliers have moved up the value chain. OEMs were holding their hands for a long while, training them. But now Indian suppliers are world-class. The delivery and the performance they are achieving is world-class. In terms of quality also, they are delivering over 99.95% sometimes, So I clearly think we have the capability, we have the potential, and we need huge support of the government in support of policies and not come up with retrospective policies. What the OEMs don't like is sudden change, or sudden retrospection on a policy because they have come and invested more than, several millions of dollars to make that happen. So therefore, I'll make my, inputs a little short. What I want to say, India is at an inflection point. I'm very optimistic about Atmanirbhar Bharat. There is huge potential. We have dynamics at play, through the Quad, through the geopolitical situation that the world is in today. India has scale, it has innovation, and therefore the defense sector can be a huge benefactor and an economic driver. A couple of things on the policies I would recommend is that let's not discount the civil aviation sector, which has made such a lot of investment in India. because laws of physics in both defense and commercial remain the same. So let's use those synergies also, which the OEMs have invested, the technologies they have brought in, the investment they have brought in the commercial aviation sector. If you look at Boeing, they are manufacturing floor beams in India for the 787. They are manufacturing aerostructures in India for different things. Collins Aerospace is doing a lot of manufacturing in India on aerostructures and chutes, etc. So these are also common to the defense sector. So let's keep this synergy between both the sectors, and in the future policies, let's not remove that investment and that expertise which has already been brought in. There are other sectors we can look at which are, where both the US and India can work together, maybe things like MRO, etc., in the commercial aerospace. These are sectors where, again, people like us can bring in investments and expertise. And these can be then grown to support defense sectors as well. Again, I'll end by saying that my concluding remarks are, there's a huge opportunity here, there's a huge potential here. So let's work together with the government and industry to make it happen and take defense aerospace manufacturing, engineering, ecosystems, skilling, development to the next level. Thank you.
May I now request Captain Vikram Mahajan, who is US-India Strategic Partnership Forum, to give us his give us a perspective of how Indian industry, especially Indian private sector industry, in defense, offset, and others, can participate in the global supply chain. And what do you require from the American perspective, facilitation from the Indian side, Indian government side, Indian involvement of private sector, etc., so that this can flourish, and even flourish in the sense of the highest technology areas on AI, on cyber, etc. So what are the enabling requirements for Indian industry to get certified, especially private sector industries to get certified with the American companies?
Thank you, Rahul, and thank you, VW. So before I get to replying Rahul's specific question, I think I'll just give a broad overview because I'm here to speak about US-India partnership, and so I'll just broadly cover before I answer Rahul's question is in two parts. One is the policy changes in the DAP, which actually affect not just US-India, but any foreign company to invest in India. And then I'll specifically cover the initiatives between US and India, and then I'll answer Rahul's question. So to begin with, all the changes have already been covered by Mr. Jaju. Certain points I'll reiterate, and certain things that I'd like to bring out, which have been, which I would like to elaborate upon, which affect the foreign companies who are invested in India or who are desirous of investing in India. One of them, to begin with, is the negative procurement list or the positive indigenization list. How this affects foreign companies, it actually affects them in a very positive way, which I'll come to a little later. The other thing that has been incorporated in this new DAP 2020 is the Buy Global Manufacture in India categorization, in which foreign companies can come and manufacture in India. It's a preferred category above Buy Global, and it does benefit manufacturing in India in a very big way. The third, much to the dislike of Mr. Kanodia here, the offsets that have been done away with. it was something which was waiting to happen with piling up of offsets as of recent past. The unexecuted offsets were to the amount of $6 billion. And so it was just a matter to come to the realization that through G2G proposals, offsets have to be done away with. However, the offsets have not been done away with. The policy has been tweaked. They have only been done away with for G2G proposals, whether it is with any country going abroad. And the biggest change as far as the DAP is concerned is the introduction of 74% FDI in defense. Now, with 74% FDI in defense, the biggest advantage that foreign companies have is that they can participate in all categories of DAP, barring two. One is Buy Indian IDDM, and second is the SP chapter. There are a lot of other clauses given that under make procedure, DRDO procedure, etc. But the bottom line of all those procurements is that all the final procurement happens through Buy Indian IDDM. So there are just two categories where foreign companies with 74% FDI cannot participate, and that is IDDM and SP chapter. Now, coming back to the original point that I had made, that with this caveat, a foreign company in India with 74% FDI can participate even in the negative list, except for IDDM, because in the negative list, if you read para 6, I think, of chapter 1, it very clearly says that foreign companies can participate in in the negative list in all categories except for so basically the point is that through Buy Global Manufacture in India down to Buy and Make and Buy Indian. So foreign company cannot participate as IDDM and they cannot participate as Buy Global, but other three categories, foreign companies can even participate in the negative list. This is a very important thing for everybody to understand. Now, coming to the US-India relationship, I think as was brought out by Rahul a little earlier, that nobody envisaged 2 decades ago that the US-India relationship will be where it is today. The US Armed Forces and Indian Armed Forces are exercising with each other today more than anybody else in the world. The foundational agreements have been signed. India has been assigned as a major defense partner in 2016. The Asia Pacific was rechristened as Indo-Pacific. The entire command was rechristened primarily to give the emphasis of India in the Indo-Pacific. And the two major portions which are important to understand towards Make in India were signed. First one, GSOMIA, was signed in the year 2002, which was nearly 2 decades ago, wherein there could be exchange of classified information between the industry in US and the DPSUs in India. And in the recent past, just a couple of years ago, ISA has been signed, that is the Industrial Security Annex, through which the classified information between the US companies and Indian private sector can be exchanged. The nuances of which are being worked out. We had a team which had come down from US. They have been working with JSTIP, and a lot of work has happened towards that, and they will be coming out with the process pretty soon. Now, as far as going forward, working together, co-production, co-development, this is another thing which was a stumbling block in co-production, co-development, which has again been, addressed in the DAP 2020. I think it's para 127, 128 in chapter 2, which addresses how co-production, co-development with a foreign country can take place. So, and there is a platform called DTTI, which has been struggling for past around 9 years, but now it has taken off. All the loose ends have been tied up, and there is a lot to look forward to through DTTI. In the previous panel, Samit had mentioned that there is a lot of work that is happening, not just within the private sector, but also companies, US companies are working with DRDO to exchange technology. And this is not past technology, but futuristic technology, wherein a lot of work is happening. There is already futuristic, a project for air-launched UAVs, which will be common to US and India. And this is one forum, and we need to look at more such forums and avenues wherein co-production and co-development can officially take place. Having said that, getting back to Rahul's question, now I firmly believe, and it has been proven, that water flows to where the ground is low. Everybody, even despite all the talk of China, it is still the highest trading partner for US as well as India, because the products there are cheap. To what Ashmita said a short while ago, India has got an amazing talent. There have been studies which have been carried out that the purchase power if you go through purchase power parity, the cheapest equipment to be manufactured globally after China is India. And there is skill, there is amazing quality of equipment which is being manufactured there. And labor is low, and we can make global quality stuff, which is already being done and which is being exported, not just through JVs, but there are a lot of independent companies, which I don't have to name. I'm sure all of you know those companies, whether it's Dynamatics. There are so many of other, I'm sure sir is also exporting to a lot of foreign companies. So although the only thing about US is that they are very stringent on quality control, and the fact that that India has been exporting equipment to US, whether it's parts, there are foreign OEMs, be it Ashmita, as she mentioned, within Raytheon Technologies, just Pratt & Whitney, Collins Aerospace, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Honeywell, GE, all these companies have their setups in India, not purely because there is talent here, and it makes sense to manufacture in India and supply to global supply chain. Yes, there are issues. There are issues of tax structures. There are issues which need to be addressed. And the biggest issue, as far as I'm concerned, are the issues of protracted timelines. If these are the issues which can be addressed, I think there's nothing stopping India from being the next biggest global supplier, not just for India, but for the world in defense. Thank you.
Thank you. May I now request Lieutenant General Sani, who understands this area for a very, very long time, for his comments.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Business World, to get me over here. I am in the process of being educated because I would like to understand from the business point of view as to what more can be done to make India self-sufficient. At the outset, I must put on record that the present government in last 7 years, they have done astonishing work insofar as making India Atmanirbhar. It's a very, very difficult task, which at some time, just about say, even about 10 to 15 years ago, one thought was not possible. But the rate at which, the speed at which it has been done is truly commendable. But the problems are very many. Problems are varied problems which have been brought out by the people who know about it. But one thing is for certain, that the country has made up its mind that they have to be self-sufficient insofar the armed forces are concerned. Because you see, you just can't have your ambitions to be a regional player or a regional power unless and until you make your own arms, your own ammunition, and your own equipment. So towards that particular goal, I think lots of things have been done and more are required to be done, but they are being done. The difficulties are very much there, but I would say that they are being removed gradually and slowly. 2, 3 things I like to put across. Firstly, the Indian Armed Forces, and I'm making all the three services. You see, if there was a comparison as far as the capability and efficiency is concerned, they're second to none. I am myself, it shows my age. I've taken part in at least 3 operations. And I've always found that ultimately the armed forces overcome whosoever has tried to have aggressive intentions towards us. So that is a quality which very few armed forces can have. That is very, very commendable. But we have to realize another point. I belong today to a think tank where we continue thinking about, we have, in addition to other things, the strategic scenarios. We have amongst our members, people from the diplomatic community, from the IAS people, from the armed forces, economists. So for last about 4 or 5 years, we try to make up a scenario as to what would be the type of scenario in which India would have to fight its adversaries. So that is something which requires to be considered. Because basically what is happening is that at the moment today, if you look at the, what you call Chinese, the PLA, they have stolen the march. And I am using the word stolen very, very carefully. They have literally stolen the things as far as technology is concerned, as far as the wherewithal is concerned. So today they have become a power to reckon with. So there is a requirement for us to be able to confront them in those areas which we had not thought of so carefully earlier. For example, emerging technologies is one area where I think we require to think about. Just about 4 or 5 days ago, we had the second session with a reputed think tank in US who had also been able to get people from the American establishment about 5G, 6G, about the AI and the related, what do you call, about the quantum computing. So these are the areas which we find that the future conflicts are going to play, they are going to play a big role as far as the future conflicts are concerned. So I think there is a requirement for us in these green fields to be able to innovate and to be able to create infrastructure to be able to beat the possible adversaries. So we had a lot of discussion about it, and it was very gratifying to hear lots of Indian experts and to be sort of who told us that they are quite capable of innovations, they're quite capable of competing. And so far as skilling was concerned, this was also mentioned that our young people, young boys and the girls are second to none. One of the very important point which I heard in that discussion was from a lady from the US establishment. She said that the US is thinking of creating an academy on the line of West Point, where they are going to train young people, young men and women for a period of 2 to 3 years in the same type of a discipline which prevails in the West Point. And they would be having a reckonable force who would be absolutely formidable so far as technology is concerned, so far as knowledge about technology is concerned. That set me thinking, because I feel that we have a huge potential for creating infrastructure to train our young people into the new frontier technologies. I would say this is the area where there is a requirement of investment. Because when you see quite a few of these youngsters who have created startups, it gladdens your heart. Because the legacy equipment, etc., of course, will continue going. But in my view, the future conflicts probably will require us to be technologically as advanced as our possible adversaries. And the latest analysis of the PLA, all the three wings given by the Pentagon, gives us type of the, what do you call, scenarios which are going to be inflicted on us by the Chinese should push come to a shove. So I think there is a requirement for all of us to push in that direction. And I'm absolutely certain that we can do it. You see, after all, if you look at it, the majority of the firms, when you see in US, which have anything to do with technology, with medicine, with biotechs, with anything, you find bulk of the people who are doing the thinking are of the Indian origin. So I think there is a requirement now for us to be able to push ourselves in that direction. Because to compete in areas which are the green fields, which are still open, I think it is in those areas that we can excel. And probably with the investments we have got with us, and if we are able to create infrastructures which is for the future, I think that would be a very, very important thing to do. So this is basically my, what do you call, suggestion. But I also want to tell you that when we talk about our getting, left behind as far as the various types of armaments are concerned, I think this is a fear which doesn't require to be there. Because I can tell you one thing, that our troops, be they the Army, Air Force, or the Navy, they have got the capacities, they have got the ability, and they have got dedication. So if they are given, even if they are given an equipment which is slightly less than state of art, they are capable of handling it well. And I'm not saying for the sake of saying, because whenever we have had the joint exercises in any sphere, whether on the ground, air, or on the sea, we have always had compliments from the people with whom the Indian armed forces have trained. And they have always said that they cannot be better airmen, soldiers, and sailors as good as the Indian are concerned. So I would look at it this way, that it is our duty, whether we are in uniform or we are the businessmen or we are in the defense industry, that we have to continue to equip these magnificent men in all the three dimensions to the best of your abilities. Because if we don't do that, our security, our well-being will be threatened. And I'm absolutely certain that our defense industry, our scientists, our investors, they are as patriotic as the Indian Army is. So I think together we should be able to create an environment where there should be no possibility of any adversary trying to bully us or threaten us. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
May I now request Ashok Vadavanji to give his comments. The last word goes to Adani Group.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, Business World, for giving me the opportunity to talk here. So I'm going to talk about Make in India. And when we look at Make in India and Adani, we a couple of years back we looked at and said, what does it mean to us, and what do we do with it? And we thought over it, decided, did a lot of research, spoke to the customer, our forces, our users, and we realized that our objective of getting into defense and aerospace was to build capability. There is a need which exists in our forces, and we say there is a gap. And a lot of my friends have spoken about a lot of gaps. Yes, there is a lot of policy requirement and others, but what we really saw was there is our forces which need the best in class futuristic equipment, and there is a need for our industry to build up. So we got in to build capabilities, and we identified areas where we said those are areas where we will build deep capabilities and bring it to our forces to be able to use it, but not just to our forces, but build it in our country so that it can be not limited here, but for exports. Now, that's what everyone wants. But when we decided in doing it, we decided to focus and go deep. So we identified small arms as a start. We brought in the best in class in the first manufacturing capability here. When we talk about capability, it's not just limited upon equipment, land, but it's manpower and partners who can be associated and build infrastructure and capability in the country, which can support us as well as support the other people also. So it is tier 1, tier 2. So that's how we got into it, and that's what we think Make in India is. Make in India is to bring in the capability. So be it small arms. Then we said, where is it the futuristic war going to be, and which is the need of the hour for our forces? So we got into UAVs. We built up a capability 3 years back, and we are today manufacturing UAVs and exporting it. So that's how we look at Make in India. Then last year, when we saw what was happening in Iran and what was happening in Azerbaijan and rest of the world, we said counter drones would be one thing which would be very much needed in our country. We demonstrated our capability in March, much ahead in time, where we felt it was required in the Ahmedabad airport, and we brought in the rest of the people. And then obviously today it's a need, and we see the future coming into it. So you know, as a group, for us, Make in India is not just looking at orders which exist here or going into programs like any other organization and you know, bidding on programs, but building capability. The most important, like Ashok said, and you know, Sir said here, is ammunition. So we decided that, you know, ammunition could be one thing which our forces need, and which requires sustainability and a integrated park to come in. We are building, you know, a full integrated park ammunition, which is starting from small caliber, medium caliber, going into long range guided bombs and bringing it to the country. It's not that the orders exist today, but today, if we get into it and we build the capability on the ground, it will not just support us today, but it will support us for the next 50 years. So that's how we look at Make in India. When we talk about Atmanirbhar Bharat, or when we speak with our partners or friends here or friends in the forces or the user, we feel as a corporate, what we need to do is identify areas among us and go deep. So if it's a large organization and becoming a prime, it has to look into it, into an area, and not focus on, you know, multiple things, collaborate with each other and go deep into it, and build the capability today. I'm sure eventually our forces will use it, but if not, it'll still be required in the rest of the world, and you'll have that capability which exists, which helps you to do multiple things. We speak about R&D and we say, okay, let's do R&D. Issue is, you can only do R&D in a field where you have built capability and you are already manufacturing or you know, exporting it. You can't just get into a product line, do R&D and wait for an order to come in. So like when we got into small arms 4 years back, we were basically looking at component manufacturing. Today we are making the full range, starting from you know, a pistol to light machine gun, but we are not focusing on that today. We are focusing on bringing artificial intelligence into small arms, which is the next way of looking at it. And we are hoping to demonstrate this in the next 2-3 quarters, where we would have artificial intelligence embedded in small arms. So that is kind of moving ahead, bringing the futuristic weapon systems to doing it. So what I would leave to the table here is, to all my friends, yes, there is problems. Policy has been changing, and you know, the government has been adopting, government is moving. We have to move with them, but what we have to do is in our hands, and which is to focus on few things, if we are serious about getting into this line, not just for creating a business, but to help our forces bring in capability. Put your money where your mouth is. Once you go deep, don't wait and say, okay, I'm going to be manufacturing A to aircraft, everything, which all of us know it's not possible. When I say build capability, build your infrastructure, build your manpower, build your supply chain, build your partnerships. You'll see the results, if not today, maybe in a period of time, but it will be not just for us, but it'll be for the world. Look at a country like Israel. Today, they have a small country, but builds and supplies technology, which is the future technology to the world. Why? Because they build capability. That's what we need to do, and that's how we look at Atmanirbhar. Atmanirbhar is to make sure we become sustainable and eventually get into futuristic weapons or futuristic equipment, which is sustainable for us, but even for the world. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a good note to end this session, that Make in India ultimately translates down to capability. And I think I would quote a Chinese proverb, which was often quoted for Deng Xiaoping, that if the cat is catching the mouse, we should not look at the color of the cat. I think time has come when we need to get out of this artificial divide of what is an Indian company, etc. I mean, look at America. At the end of the day, in America, BAE America is one of the largest. It's a UK owned company, but it's not the equity, it's the capability, and whosoever creates the capability creates the jobs, creates the value addition in India, needs to be part of this Make in India story to create jobs, to create capability, and to create sustenance. Thank you.